Hi, it's Alwyn from Alwyns Photo School. I'm going to be very brave now. I'm going to try and demonstrate 5 different programs, or 6 different programs from the NIK range in 3 to 4 minutes. Very brave, huh? First one I want to talk about is what's called HDR Effects Pro. Now, just to explain, NIK software is a plugin, a group of 8 plugin programs that go into Lightroom or into Photoshop or Photoshop Elements. And the best way of describing it is like an expansion set for these programs. It lets them do an awful lot more. For example, this is an image taken at the State Library. Now, it's a tricky image because I've got one half exposed correctly, this area around here, and this area here is not exposed that well. If I want to do that as a HDR image, I'd have to take 5 images at the time, or some cameras will take 5 simultaneous images, or you need to have a raw file and work back from there. I'm going to do this using the NIK program, and I'm going to do this using an original a JPEG file or a TIFF file. All I do is I right-click it, export into the program. Now, what it's going to do is, this will take a couple of seconds. It's going to simultaneously make that image 2 times darker, 1 times darker, +1, +2 f-stops, and merge those 5 f-stops together to make a HDR image, which should appear, there we go, there's a HDR image. Now, just to put that in perspective, there's the original in Lightroom, and there's my new HDRX Pro image. It gives me a mass of different presets for different effects. If you don't like this, you can make it a brighter one, a black and white one. There's a mass of these. These are all presets that come with it. And then if you like it, you save it. If you don't like it, you get rid of it. That's one of them. And by the way, this is not just presets of these. There are massive different settings for this to actually fine line all of this. I'm doing this quickly. Next image I want to work with. I want to take this lovely shot of Melbourne, and I want to try and replicate what would happen if it was taken on an old-fashioned camera. Now I'm going vintage. I'm going back 50, 60, 70 years. To do that, we open it in a program called Analog Effects Pro. And what I've done is I've preset this to a setting called Vintage Camera 2. There it is. By the way, just to put that in perspective. Before, after. Before, after. I love this sweep. It's the preview mode. You can actually run right across. I've even got on the bottom here, can you see the color bleed coming through? You can actually change how much light bleed you want to have on your photograph. For example, images like here, you can actually have this bizarre thing of light coming in from the side. Vintage cameras is one of the settings. You actually have settings for classic cameras, motion cameras, double exposure cameras. Quite gorgeous. One of my favorites is Classic Camera 2. And when you've done that, if you want to do more to it, for example, let's make it look really old, on the right hand side, on the adjustments, one of them says dirt and scratches, and I can actually put dirt on that, like so. I can even put coffee rings on there. Yeah. Anyway, that's 2. Let's go now back to our main grid. I'm now going to work with Define. Now, Define is a specific program for noise reduction. Now, I'm going to work on this image for this. Now, it's taken at a concert, and it's got a fair amount of noise on the photograph. Let me open the program up for you. And let's make this full size. Thanks. Whoops. Thank you. Now, I want to make it bigger, and as I do, you'll see the noise level. You can see right across the side there, there's quite a amount of noise in this. Let's make it back to normal size. Now, what you do with this is, if you program in, when you're fixing noise on most programs, it does a general fix right across the whole program. What we're going to do is fix we're going to fix the photograph, but rather than just right across the whole thing, we're going to do different levels of fixing on different areas. Now, I'm going to use a method called automatic, and on the right hand side it says here measure noise, and you can see it's going to pick out these areas in boxes are where it's measuring the noise. It's now fixing, and press reduce, and we are done. Thank you. Now let's make it bigger. And there's our noise fixed. Now just to show you a preview, if I go before and after, the noise right across. So look on the right hand side of her, left hand side of her face. As I sweep it across, there's our noise removed. I love this program. Okay, we can remove you. Let's now go on to Silver Effects Pro. Oh, what I should do is just get this down for a second and remove you. Thanks. Let's go back to Grid and show the original image I'm going to be working with. Grid, thank you. I'm going to be using pretty little image from Puffing Billy. This bright colour one image here. I'm going to export that into a program called Silver Effects Pro. Silver Effects Pro is probably the best black and white program you can get. Okay. Now, what it's done is it's made the image black and white. Yippee-doo. When we used to use black and white cameras, we used to use filters to correct differences in colour. And we used to use red filters, green filters, blue filters. On the right hand side, you can see here are the original filters. So if, for example, I want to see what would happen if I put it for a red filter, that would happen to my photograph. Amber filter, yellow, green, blue. Or I can just ignore that. I also have massive presets for different types of effect. But the interesting one for me is this. It's one on the right hand side called Film Types. And if I pop that open, it's a drop down menu here, it will list every major film made in the last 50 years. And I can replicate, for example, Ilford Pan 100, which I used to use. That's exactly what it looked like if I took a photograph in that film. On the other hand, Ilford Pan 400 would be a bit grainier, as you can see from the effect there. All of those part of the program. It's quite cool, isn't it? Okay, let's remove that one. Back to Grid, and we're now going to work on a setting up. This is the similar thing. It's called Color Effects Pro. I'm going to use this image here, and let's open you up. Thank you. Color Effects Pro is a similar thing to the Silver Effects Pro, but obviously for color. Duh. This is quite cool because you can do some really, really interesting stuff with this. This is a shot taken in England of Devon. Now I'm going to use a filter for this called Indian Summer. Now I've got the wipe across here, the before and after wipe. I'm going to move that wipe now and open it up, and I'm going to make the shot look like it was taken in late autumn. There we go. So we've gone from summer to late autumn. One of my favourites on this, which is going to sound a bit bizarre, is fog. You can actually click fog on the photograph. There we go. It's actually in the wrong place. I can move the fog around to where it should be. So move it around to here. I can choose how much fog I want, how high and how low I want the fog to be. Quite cool, isn't it? There's a mass of these besides that, but that's the group of them. One more here. Let's just go back to Lightroom and Grid. This image here, God, that's hard to do. We're actually doing this live. Let's go up to my program again. It should be open by now. There you go. Now what I want to do with this girl is, when you're ready, thank you. Yes, in the middle of fog. Let's get back to this. Go to fog off, thank you. Example of doing things live. I'm going to make her prettier. She's beautiful already, but I'm going to use a thing called Glamour Glow. When I do that, you can now see before and after. It's gorgeous difference. There's also a couple others on here. One of my favourites is Bleach Bypass. Classic effect we use. Black and white, obviously. Dynamic skin softener. Amazing little effects. I really love these. Anyway, let's remove that one. That's the Color Effects Pro. Phew, last one. The last one is probably the coolest of all. I'm going to show you an image here. I'm just going to get this up. And what I'm going to do is move you across. Now, this is an image of an orchid, which is quite a bland photograph. I'm going to make it a fraction more dramatic. Now, this is the Vaser program. What you can do with this is you can either make the whole thing fixed, and they're called global fixes. You can actually go across and make the whole thing brighter, contrast, saturation of the whole image. That's fine. But in this case, I like the background. What I really want to fix is the leaves on this orchid. Now, NIK uses the most amazing technology called a UPoint technology. And what that means is this. If I want to fix this in Photoshop or Lightroom, I'd have to mask the other area and just work on that one area there. What NIK does is use a thing called UPoint. Now what it does is this. You add a thing called a control point and ask where you want to put it. Now I'm going to put it in the middle of that leaf. And that tells me that everything in that circle area that is that specific color I can now work on. Okay, so it won't affect anything else in the photograph, just that one group of pixels. Now, you can make it smaller and larger. Yeah, you want to work with. I'm going to work on the whole orchid, and I want to increase the saturation. So I'm going to turn the saturation up, and there's our saturation increased. Just that. One other thing I want to do is the structure, which is just there. I want to make it more detailed. Now, I've done these leaves here, but I want to do this other part here. So I make another control point here. And again, make sure it's the right area. We're in a good area. It's good. It's all around here. And again, saturation. Turn up. And see, it's increasing the saturation on the leaf, but nothing else around it's being touched. And structure again, to make it a tiny bit more punchier. There we go. Now, let's do a before and after. That was our original shot. That's our fix. It is such an absolutely brilliant program. Okay, at that point I will say thank you for listening.